Welcome back! You're tuned into an infinite flight tutorial, and in this video I'll give you a quick guide to flying the Airbus 330. While it may look like any other Airbus from the flight deck, there are a few unique characteristics to learn that will make your next flight a success. Today's flight takes us from Mumbai to Dubai with a flight time of 2.5 hours. At 375,000 pounds, we're a fairly standard weight for the A330's most common short to medium haul legs. We've pushed back from the gate for an on-time departure, and we'll begin our startup procedure first with engine number 1, followed by number 2. With our control surfaces checked and both engines running, we're ready to announce our taxi, shut down the APU, and make our way to runway 27. Thrust shouldn't exceed 40% in-1 during taxi operations and can be significantly reduced once rolling to maintain a taxi speed. The Airbus 330 straightaway speed can go up to 30 knots, though no more than 10 knots should be used for turns 90 degrees or more. We'll account for the Airbus 330 size by taking turns wide to roll out on the taxiway center lines. The Airbus 330 uses 1+F flap configuration for most takeoffs at this weight, though heavy departures call for flaps 2 or even flaps 3 at max takeoff weight. I've announced takeoff on runway 27, flaps are set to 1+F, positive trim of 40% which I recommend for departures, and we'll slow down to 10 knots in order to begin our 90-degree turn onto the runway. Note that I've set my autopilot panel prior to departure to help remember things like rotation speed, runway heading, and desired cruise altitude. Aligned on the center line, I advance my power to 50% in-1 before setting a takeoff power of 89% in-1. A power setting of 87% to 91% in-1 under most conditions is standard for departure, though max available thrust may be called for at max takeoff weight or in a scenario with high performance demand. As I accelerate towards 100 knots, I'll maintain some forward pressure to keep the nose wheel down and maintain directional control. Passing 100 knots, we ease off the nose pressure, maintain center line with our rudder, and wait for our rotation speed of 140 knots, at which time we slowly rotate to 7 degrees nose up until airborne. Positive rate, gear up, and continue gradually pitching up to 15 degrees, which will hold for our initial climb out through 1,500 feet above the airport elevation. Passing 1,500 feet, I'll lower the nose to 10 degrees, reduce to a climb power setting which is commonly 10% less than takeoff, and begin accelerating. Our first flap retraction to flaps 1 begins passing 180 knots and flaps up at 195 knots. I'll continue to accelerate until reaching 250 knots, at which time we simply adjust our pitch to maintain that speed. Once above 10,000 feet, we'll again lower the nose and accelerate to 300 knots, which is the common climb speed in the Airbus 330. To the right in the reference area, you'll see a standard climb profile for the Airbus 330 to maximize fuel efficiency. The service ceiling for the Airbus 330 is flight level 410 or 41,000 feet, with a normal cruising speed of Mach 0.78 through 0.82. Lower speeds and step climbs should be used to maximize range and fuel efficiency, though the Airbus 330 can easily maintain 30 to 35,000 feet even at heavier weights. A good rule of thumb is to keep your cruise power setting below 91% in-1. We've reached our top of descent into Dubai and will arm VNAV to automatically descend, meeting the published altitudes at each fix. The Airbus 330 descends quite well without spoilers, though they can be used when a high rate of descent is called for. The standard Airbus 330 descent speed is anywhere between 290 and 310 knots, all the way down to 10,000 feet. As we make our way below 10,000 feet, we'll turn on our landing lights, the seatbelt sign, and make our inbound call to Dubai. We're in the downwind at 200 knots in the 1+F flaps configuration. I'm starting my descent down to 3,000 feet, reducing to 180 knots in flaps 2, before making my turn inbound to intercept the localizer. As I roll out on a heading of 090, which is a 30-degree intercept of runway 12, I'll arm the approach mode and let the aircraft take us inbound on the localizer and glide slope for the ILS runway 12 right approach. We've begun our final descent with the glide slope coming alive, and we'll begin reducing to our approach speed of 140 knots, lowering our gear and selecting flaps 3 below 180 knots, finally selecting flaps full below 160 knots. As we stabilize for landing, we'll ensure our spoilers are set to arm so they automatically deploy on landing, and also increase trim as needed to ensure stability once disconnecting autopilot. Note that flaps 3 can also be used for landing when at light weights with plenty of available runway. This allows for a higher approach and landing speed. As we approach short final, we're configured for landing. Flaps full, gears down, spoilers are armed, and maintaining a final approach speed of 137 knots. The Airbus 330 commonly flies its final approach at 2.5 to 3.5 degrees nose high, so it's common to feel like you're already flared going into the landing. Just after the 40-foot callout, we'll slowly begin to bring the nose up to 5 to 6 degrees, retarding the throttle at 10 to 20 feet until your main gears touch down. I'm using rudder to hold the center line, fly the nose down to the ground, and apply reverse thrusters. Long runways may allow for idle thrust, though we want to quickly exit at busy airports like Dubai. I've applied 75% reverse, begin manually braking at 80 knots, and will reduce to idle reverse at 70 knots until we fully stow them at 60 knots, at which time we simply continue manually braking until we're at a safe speed to exit the runway. We've arrived in Dubai, which means it's time to clean up the aircraft, turn our taxi and strobe lights off, and make our way to the gate with another successful leg in the books. If this helped you, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.